It's a pleasure to speak in this debate on this very important topic, and it's one that I very passionately believe in as someone who got involved in politics to make people's lives better, to be on the side of those who work hard, do the right thing, and who are aspirational for themselves and their families. And that's the fundamental point at the core of this argument. And I think my honourable friend, the member for Windsor, he made a great point when he said that this is a moral mission. It's a moral mission to be on the side not just of those who are aspirational, but to unlock the hopes, the dreams of a generation which want to have that tangible stake in society, but who have great fears that they will never achieve that. And stamp duty, for many, it's a tax on that dream home, that bridge between where they are today and where they want to go tomorrow, particularly for their families. We hear a lot in this debate about first-time buyers, and it's right that we focus on first-time buyers, but it's particularly shameful that one of the first acts of this Labour government was to lower the threshold at which stamp duty was imposed for those first-time buyers. But once they've been in their house for a few years and they've got a child, maybe a second child, and want to move on up the property ladder into a property that will better meet their needs, that's where this tax really starts to bite. I've got constituents who've approached me because they've been able to afford a mortgage on their next home. They've even identified that next home that they want to move into, but it's the stamp duty that is preventing them from moving. And what particularly strikes me, Madam Deputy Speaker, in the argument that we've had between the two sides of the House, in fact, probably across both opposition sides of the House and members on this side of the chamber, is that many are making the case that stamp duty is something, well, if we removed it, it's going to cause house prices to rise. If stamp duty was removed as a temporary measure, there's a chance that that would happen. But if it was removed in perpetuity, the housing market will regularise without a huge increase in house prices. This is the key to unlocking the aspiration that so many hold for themselves and their families. And I can only conclude that whilst I don't believe members on the benches opposite have particularly nefarious intent, that this really does demonstrate the politics of envy. Yeah. It's a fact of life that there are some in society who will always have more wealth than others. The scale is always relative. But even if those at the upper end of the strata of wealth in society benefit from a tax cut that this would impose, those further down the chain below them will also benefit from this. The great reality of this proposal is that it's universal in its application. Everyone will benefit. And this is fundamentally about unlocking mobility and the aspirations of so many. It's not just the first-time buyers, it's not just those wanting to move up, but those who want to downsize that we've heard so much about today. There are plenty of constituents across Bromsgrove and the villages who are not cash rich but are asset poor, who I know are trapped in larger houses but would like to downsize should the fiscal incentive be there for them to do so. And stamp duty in the form of tens of thousands of pounds is absolutely that key in so many cases.
Will you give way on that point?
I will give way.
One of the really important points about that, especially for elderly people who are caught in a large home, is from the social care aspect in terms of making sure their health care and support is there as they get older. If they find themselves trapped in a large house, it has all the problems of how do you make sure it's modified. That has an additional cost that is often lost. So does he agree by freeing them up to be able to move, there's a benefit saving there?
My honourable friend makes a very valid and important point, and that's one of the great peripheral sort of benefits of this policy, should the government embrace it. And I do encourage them to look seriously at it. I encourage the government to vote for this motion on the basis of intent alone, even if they've got no intention of implementing it anytime soon. We've heard, Madam Deputy Speaker, about the stimulus effect. A typical spend from someone moving house or a family moving house is around £9,000. My honourable friend, the member for Windsor, pointed out that those who are employed in trades that would benefit from that spend, these are people who aren't necessarily rich. They're the hard workers who set their alarms in the morning. They're the very people themselves who have aspiration for their family and want to be able to move up the property ladder. But one of the fundamental ideological points that seems to be striking me in this debate, emanating from members on the opposite side, is one of sort of a denial of capitalism, if you like, and the role that capitalism plays in driving up prosperity. And my right honourable friend, the member for North West Hampshire, he made this point so eloquently. Capitalism is not something that we should be afraid of. It's the biggest driver of prosperity that the Western world has known, and members on the benches opposite should embrace it with a little bit more vigour. Madam Deputy Speaker, a point that I've got to touch upon, because it affects my constituency so profoundly, is the government's increase in housing targets. Members on these benches, including myself, we are not anti-house building, but we do believe that house building has to be proportionate. Now, in my case, Bromsgrove in the Villages is a 79% rural constituency. It really is the green buffer between Worcestershire and the urban sprawl of Birmingham. It is 89% greenbelt, yet our housing target has increased by a staggering 85%, whilst the housing target in adjacent Birmingham has decreased by over 30%. Now, I've given various ministers various opportunities to address this point on the floor of the House of Commons. No one has been able to yet, so I can only assume, in the words of my honourable friend, the member for Bridgewater, that the government is fiddling the figures for political reasons. So I would welcome it if the minister, in his summing up, would address the huge disparity, the disproportionate burden being borne on rural areas, including Bromsgrove in the Villages, as a result of the government's current housing targets. But there is something that the government could do in order to make the bitter pill of more housing easy to swallow, but they abandoned it on day one, and that is to have high-quality design as a central tenet of the planning system. The previous government opened the Office for Place, an advisory body, if you like, that advised the Secretary of State on the quality of the built environment. And every single government, regardless of political colour, should embrace the principles of good design, because they don't just lead to good houses, they lead to better communities. And if you can convey to a community that new housing is not going to impose red brick monotony that erodes a sense of identity and character, then the government will find much more openness from communities towards the house building agenda. I will give way.
He makes an excellent point, and one of the biggest concerns I have is that the government has taken away the funding for neighbourhood plans. Now, neighbourhood plans, we know, gives villages their say of where planning goes, but more importantly, delivers more housing. So is it short-sighted? Does he believe it's short-sighted to take that funding away, compounding the problem he's talking about at style and design, to get communities to take on extra housing?
He's spot on. It's incredibly short-sighted, and I think it will prove to be a false economy. So I urge the government, Madam Deputy Speaker, to embrace good design, to provide a justification to my constituents on why it's pursuing the current house targets in such a disproportionate way across the country. And most of all, I implore the government to put at the centre of their fiscal plans to bear in mind the scale of ambition that hardworking people have every single day when they set their alarms, they go out to work, they want to do the right thing for their families. The government must realise that by pulling the right fiscal levers, cutting the right taxes, that will stimulate the very kind of activity that will drive the growth that they are so desperate to achieve.